All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We interact with the forces of supply and demand literally every single day, but sometimes those forces just fail to deliver the best outcomes for society as a whole. So today, we're going to explore exactly why free markets break down and how governments effectively have to step in and act as mechanics to fix those systemic bugs. We kind of like to think of free markets as these perfectly efficient, well-oiled machines, right? But the reality is they have inherent bugs, which is exactly what economists call market failures. This happens when the basic price mechanism just completely ignores the hidden costs and benefits of producing something. And that leads to goods being overproduced, underproduced, or honestly, sometimes not produced at all. So here's our game plan for today. We're covering 5 key areas. First, when free markets fail. Second, the free rider problem. Third, controlling harmful consumption. Fourth, investing in merit goods. And finally, setting price controls. Let's get into it. Starting off with Section 1, when free markets fail. Okay, so in a textbook, supply and demand sort everything out perfectly. It's neat, it's tidy. But real-world economies, they are incredibly messy. Inefficiencies and a huge lack of information often cause this whole mechanism to just break down. I mean, even the most bustling, hyperactive markets rely on everyone having perfect information, which in reality almost never, ever happens. Moving right along to Section 2, the free rider problem. So our very first major bug involves public goods. We're talking about services like streetlights or city drainage systems that literally benefit absolutely everyone. And what's really fascinating here is that you using a street lamp doesn't stop the next person from using it too, right? You aren't using up the light. The person walking 10 feet behind you is getting the exact same benefit. But here's the catch. Because people can use these goods without paying for them directly, they become what we call free riders. You get the benefit without contributing a dime to the cost. And this completely wipes out any incentive for private businesses to provide these services for a profit. Think about it. A private company is definitely not going to build a massive flood defense system because it's virtually impossible to charge every single person who is kept safe by it. If we just left this to the free market, these absolutely crucial goods simply wouldn't exist. To patch this, the government steps in. They provide the goods using tax revenue, which ensures equal access for everybody. Basically, everyone contributes indirectly. But as you probably know, economics is all about trade-offs. Doing this creates an opportunity cost. Every dollar spent on those streetlights means less funding for other priorities. It's this massive, constant balancing act that dictates how your tax dollars are utilized every single day. All right, let's look at Section 3, controlling harmful consumption. Now, the free market frequently produces way too much of harmful things. We're talking about demerit goods like cigarettes, alcohol, or junk food. Why? Because consumers simply lack full information about the negative long-term effects. It's a classic information failure. People buy these things for that immediate satisfaction, totally ignoring the long-term hit to their health. Governments have to step in and fix this bug with regulations, like banning smoking in public places, or by launching massive public health campaigns. And honestly, the goal isn't just to play the fun police. It's about protecting public health and preventing this massive future burden on the healthcare system. Because the long-term economic boost you get from a healthier, more productive workforce, that far outweighs the short-term loss in tax revenue you might get from tobacco sales. Which brings us to Section 4, investing in merit goods. On the flip side of those harmful goods, what happens when the market doesn't produce enough of something really beneficial? We get merit goods, like education. If we leave schooling strictly up to private businesses, it just becomes way too expensive for a lot of people. In fact, according to UNESCO, this dynamic leaves 1 in 5 children aged 6 to 11 in sub-Saharan Africa completely out of school, entirely because of poverty. And tragically, this scales up as kids get older. By the time we look at kids aged 12 to 14, 1 in 3 are missing out on an education. That pure lack of affordability creates this massive, devastating gap in skills and potential for the entire economy. And it gets worse. By ages 15 to 17, a staggering 6 out of 10 teenagers are out of school. It just brilliantly, though sadly, illustrates the profound human cost of this specific market failure. To fight back against this, countries like Kenya, Ghana, and Sierra Leone have recently intervened. They've introduced free government education and subsidies to actually make schooling accessible, ensuring their economies can eventually benefit from a skilled workforce. We actually see a really similar problem with healthcare. There's often this massive underproduction gap between the quantity the private sector produces at a high price and the much larger quantity that society actually requires. That gap isn't just a concept, it represents real, everyday people who desperately need medical care but are just totally priced out of a purely private market. To close that gap, governments intervene, either by heavily subsidizing the private sector or just providing the service themselves. Take Pakistan, for example. They faced some really serious challenges with an underfunded healthcare system, where quality care was pretty much reserved for the wealthy. To fix this, former Prime Minister Imran Khan initiated big reforms, increasing the healthcare budget, building new rural hospitals, and investing heavily in preventative care, like absolutely vital polio immunizations. That kind of intervention is designed to make sure quality medical access is a basic right for everyone, not just a privilege for those who can afford it. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, setting price controls. So sometimes market prices naturally settle at these extreme highs or lows, and governments have to actively step in to manipulate them. They basically have two distinct tools for this: setting a maximum price ceiling to protect buyers from crazy high costs, or a minimum price floor to protect sellers from unsustainable lows. Both of these are direct interventions meant to shield vulnerable populations. Now, for a maximum price to actually do anything, it legally has to be set below the normal market rate. This is exactly how rent controls function. By capping what landlords can charge, governments are intervening to ensure that low-income families and essential key workers like nurses and teachers can actually afford to live in really expensive, high-demand cities. In that same vein, governments might cap the prices of everyday essential items, like milk and bread. When you sell staple goods at a maximum price, you're ensuring that literally everyone in society, no matter what their income level is, can afford basic nutrition. It is a very direct intervention to prevent the poorest citizens from literally being priced out of survival. On the flip side of that, to protect the people producing the goods, governments might establish a minimum price. Think about agriculture, where prices can be incredibly unstable just due to bad weather or an unexpected surplus. A government might guarantee a minimum price for crops like wheat or rice just to secure the farmers' livelihoods. So even if the market price completely crashes, the farmers stay afloat. And that in turn stabilizes the future food supply for the whole country. But, it's not perfect. It means we as consumers pay higher prices, and it can definitely cause an inefficient use of resources if they're producing way more than people actually demand. So, at the end of the day, the government acts as a totally vital mechanic for a flawed free market system. But whether it's the opportunity cost of spending our tax dollars or the market distortions that pop up from price controls, every single intervention carries a trade-off, which really leaves us with a critical question to think about for our own communities. At what point does the cost of the government's fix become even greater than the bug itself?